Hi, my name is Tim O'Donnell, and today I'll be presenting my presentation on drought. Let's start off by exploring what is drought. Drought is typically defined as a deficiency in precipitation over an extended period, usually a season or more, resulting in a water shortage causing adverse impacts on vegetation, animals, and/or people. They are usually reoccurring in certain areas of the world with drier climates, but are possible anywhere else. Scientifically, droughts occur when evaporation and transpiration, water which will travel through soil and plants into the air, exceed precipitation over a certain length of time. Below you will see several examples of how drought can look. Throughout this presentation, we will explore the geographical areas impacted by drought, the environmental and human impacts, efforts in monitoring, measuring droughts, and finally some examples of past disastrous droughts. Here's an example of the effects droughts can have on animals, the land, cracked and dry land. Drought is caused when regular weather patterns are interrupted, which impacts the traditional water cycle. The interruptions can stall regular storm tracks for extended periods. Two climate patterns which will demonstrate how an irregular water cycle can become a weather event are El Nino and La Nina, but we will explore these later. Drought can exist in many forms: meteorological, agricultural, hydrological, and socioeconomic are four main categories in which drought can usually be categorized. Meteorological drought exists when there is a lack of precipitation, whereas agricultural drought represents a lack of moisture in the soil where crops grow. Hydrological drought occurs when the level of water in the lakes and reservoirs are low, and socioeconomic drought means a shortage in potable and drinking water. Unlike many natural disasters, drought does not happen in an instant, and it can be difficult to identify the beginning and or severity of a dry spell. Furthermore, the definition of the term drought is ever changing, depending on which area of the world it is affecting. Above all, droughts are extremely costly. The effects are said to have cost America in excess of $195 billion in losses in just the past 30 years. Now let's explore regions affected. Drought truly is a global phenomenon, occurring in most regions of the world in a variety of capacities. UNICEF claims that most disastrously affected countries are Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, Uganda, Afghanistan, China, India, Iran, Morocco, and Pakistan. However, in the past 2 years alone, many other regions have experienced devastating loss via drought. Closer to home, Midwestern and Western America continue to experience water shortages and decreased rainfall, California being one of the most notable areas to suffer. Recently, South American countries such as Bolivia and Guatemala have experienced severe droughts. Bolivia's most recent drought affecting 125,000 families and 716,000 acres of land and causing notable stress among miners and farmers within the community and protests. Even regions which do not normally come to mind in regards to possible droughts can be affected, such as southern Europe, where in 2016 crops were down 30% due to a lack of rainfall, resulting in a financial loss of more than €1 billion. Even Canada experiences the dry effects of drought. In British Columbia, where high temperatures, low snow coverage, and receding water levels have led to early water conservation strategies. Now, if we take a look at this map, the darkest red is the most affected areas in the world. This is an example of the Bolivian drought. It shows the difference in the lake over the drought period. And this is a map of the most affected areas in the west part of America. Now let's take a look at the environmental impact. Through an environmental perspective, drought causes dry and poor quality soil, which can affect agricultural yields, increase in dust, which also affects agricultural practices, lack of drinking water, and low water levels, and reduced water flow in streams and lakes, which affects sanitation and the population that depend on these areas. Increase in wildlife and loss of wetlands through the heat, degradation of fish and wildlife habitat, migration of fish and wildlife, which again affects the communities around them that depend on this marine wildlife for either jobs or food, disease in fish and wildlife due to lack of drinking water. And also the large one that people tend to forget is the fires that tend to follow the drought. I personally have seen the effects of the 2000 Canberra fires in Australia, which ended leaving the entire forest charcoal black. It was a sight to see. Now let's have a look at the human impact. The human impact of drought spans much farther than one would initially think. There are some very prominent effects, such as a lack of clean drinking water and instability of crop growth, and some much more indirect effects, such as unemployment, risks, and social conflict. Let's have a look at food and water. If a shortage of water were to occur, one could imagine that attaining clean water would become somewhat more difficult. This may lead to the population utilizing lower quality water for everyday use. Water sources may be hard to find and unsafe. In developed areas of the world, where water is normally taken for granted, lifestyle changes may have to be made, which decrease the population's current quality of life, such as frequency of laundry and showers, watering grass and plants, and washing dishes. I've personally seen these effects, and they're not pleasant. Furthermore, dry conditions would likely not grow top-of-the-line crops, if any at all. Severe dehydration of soil may lead to poor or non-existent vegetation. Assuming this were to limit the number of crops available, with the same rate of demand and increase of price would sure follow. Drought can cause a detrimental loss of crops to farmers, which can last long enough to destroy their livelihood. This type of destruction is what makes drought such an expensive natural disaster. Drought's impact on disease and unrest. Lack of clean water will inevitably lead to the use of all water sources, some of which could be contaminated. This could potentially lead to infection, health complications, and ultimately loss of life. Malnutrition and famine are imminent in long droughts, where other food sources are not available. Furthermore, the overall level of sanitation decreases due to the lack of clean water available for consumption and cleaning. A region experiencing drought is likely to face civil unrest to some degree. As food sources and confidence diminish, strong survival instincts will begin to appear as the population will have to compete for available resources. As production rates decrease, the region may experience a rise in unemployment rates. This will attribute to a rise in the overall level of anxiety and stress among the population. Drought's impact on economic and livelihood. Drought can result in a negative financial impact for many of the parties involved. The steady demand but falling supply will instantly drive prices of crops up, increasing the cost of food for the residents of the region affected. This can induce forced migration to areas not affected by drought. Food producers can experience gigantic cuts in production and therefore sales, and either have to close their doors or let go of employees, once again driving the unemployment rate up. A large span of water-dependent companies, such as water sport providers, boat manufacturers, or rental agencies, and even tourism providers can suffer from water strains caused by drought. Finally, both power and industry can be affected by loss of water, such as a hydroelectric plant. Now let's take a look at monitoring classification. Oh, as previously mentioned, drought can be particularly difficult to measure as it is hard to mark the beginning, end, and severity of the event. However, some tools have been developed to help determine these factors.